You are the creator. That means there's no place anymore for hiding behind victimhood. So the people that wake up to that fact will start to play the game successfully. Worthiness is actually a birthright. We have to get out of this loop of human doing, of trying to fix things that we believe and perceive to be broken. The incentive is we can unlock more and more of our hidden powers that we didn't know about. The things that you're not aware of about yourself are being projected all around you. They manifest in the form of people, experiences, in the form of light, sound, matter, geometry. Our brains are radio receivers, and our heart is a tuning dial to control the radio receiver. If you think that your world is separate from you, it's not.
What if the deeper truths of the universe have been hiding in plain sight all along? In today's episode, we're exploring how life acts as a virtual simulation, how to play the game consciously, and how the ultimate hero's journey is an invitation for spiritual awakening. Joining us is Robert Edward Grant, an inventor, entrepreneur, and philosopher whose groundbreaking work bridges mathematics, consciousness, and the mysteries of the universe. His childlike wonder and roadmaps across various industries will leave your heart and mind blown open in this episode. I'm so happy to have you back on.
So good to be here with you.
What a gift. I wanted us to start off with talking about how life is a mirror. I know you talk about it as life is the you inverse, and that life is essentially reflecting our inner state. Can you talk to us about if this were a virtual reality game? What are the rules of this game? How do we?
If this were a virtual reality game.
How do we?
It's an important preface on
How
that
do
one.
we play it more consciously?
Well, first of all, it's kind of like, imagine you're in a dream, and you've probably had a lucid dream before. Right? Most people that are on the path towards higher consciousness have experienced a lucid dream. And when you had that dream, can you tell me the circumstance it was? Do you remember your first lucid dream? So my first lucid dream was I was swimming outside of Okinawa, of all places, and I was snorkeling there. It was around 2009, I think, 2010. And I was with like 4 or 5 of my friends, and all of a sudden I realized I'm wading in the water, which is kind of wading around, but I've also got like a wetsuit on, like a thin wetsuit. And I thought, I'm in a dream. Wait a minute, this is a dream. And I remembered that in this one, I went to this one, special course. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was Ayurvedic course with Deepak Chopra. He was talking about lucid dreaming and how when you end up realizing that you're in the dream, then you could start to control the dream. Right? So this wasn't long after the movie Inception came out.
Great movie.
And so I was like, okay, so what can I do? I'm not going to fold the sky on top of itself or fold Paris on top of itself, but maybe I can fly. So then I started believing I could fly. So I started lifting out of the water, and I was levitating over the water, and I'm like talking to my friends. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, hey, I'm like floating up here. How cool is this? And then I went and flew away. And that moment of lucidity, where you become aware that you're in the dream, is exactly the moment humanity is going through right now, as we are all waking up to the notion that we're in a simulation, and we're now waking up to the fact that we're in a simulation. And so the people that actually wake up to that fact and realize it will start to play the game successfully. Because if you're in a dream and you think it's real, that can be kind of nightmare-like, right? It could be hellish.
Yeah.
But actually, when you realize that you're in the dream and you actually have had control over the dream all along, you just didn't know how you controlled that dream. And that control of your dream is through your emotional state, through your subconscious mind. The dream projected to the outer world around you is just this notion of a you inverse. It's what's inside of you that's being projected on the outside of you. The things that you're not aware of about yourself are being projected all around you. They manifest in the form of people. They manifest in the form of experiences. They manifest in the form of light and sound and matter and geometry and everything else. And so when you finally realize that you're not just an actor on the stage, you're actually the screenwriter. You're also you're the playwright. You're the producer. You're the director. You're everything. You're even the extras. And even the people inside your dream. When you were having a dream and the people that were in the water with me, right before I started floating above the water and levitating, who made them? Well, my higher self, or the sleeper, right? Me, Robert, made them in my dream. So they're just as much me as I am me. I just happen to be the first person narrative of that dream. And in this one collective dream, all of us have our own first person narrative, which is pretty cool because then we all have our own you inverse that is painted and looked at through the prism and experienced through the prism of the facets of our own conditioning biases. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
Yeah.
And so this is a way for the one source creator to be able to observe itself through our unique eyes of perception, each one of us entirely different from the other. And that is why we exist here. We're all serving the purpose of filling this Akashic record of information of all of our emotional states from what we believe, and I say this, pejoratively to a certain extent, what we believe happens to us. Because what actually happens to us and what we believe happens to us are two entirely different things. First of all, the only thing that matters for us is what we believe, right? But that informs our emotional state. So whatever emotions we choose to react to things with is what will define our next experiences with life in general. So you ask how to basically master this game of Leela, as it's called. In Hinduism, they refer to it as Leela. The way to master it is to realize, first and foremost, you are the creator. And there's nothing in your outer world that's not you. That means there's no place anymore for hiding behind victimhood. That means there's no place anymore for hiding behind someone else's accountability rather than your own.
Yeah, that blame, anything that we're judging, we're essentially creating. And we're locked in the illusion of just that projection. And so the more I go deeper into this work, the more I see the power of doing the inner work and how important that is. That's everything. Inner work meaning questioning the thoughts, really healing shadow work, integrating. And so for you, waking up to that you are playing this video game, the remote control, what would that be for you? How do people then play it? I think it's more about doing the inner work, but I don't know if you align with that or what you would add to
your
that.
body is the remote control. Think about it. Imagine if you're playing a video game, you've got a headset, and in addition to the headset, you've got sensors to be able to read the environment around you. So the headset might be the visual sense aspect of it. But now in immersive technologies, I just went to the Sphere in Las Vegas, right? Have you been there yet?
Yeah.
Super cool, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's immersive experience. So the seat shakes and the smell comes in the room. They'll spray water if water's splashing on the screen type of thing. It's like this fully immersive experience. So think about it. Our bodies are perfect avatars to take in all of these senses. Now, we are dimensionally limited in our perception. Otherwise, the gameplay wouldn't be very fun. Right? If I'm omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, and we're going to play poker together, it's not going to be very fun if I know all the cards you're going to be dealt beforehand, if I know how you're going to react to being dealt that hand, and how you're going to basically play and how you're going to perceive how I'm going to play. It's kind of like if you and I were playing chess in today's world even, and it was obvious that in 7 moves I had you beat. We'd stop the game right now. There's no point.
Not fun.
There's no fun in it. So there has to be this notion of forgetfulness. There has to be this notion of amnesia. Otherwise, and I say amnesia around the concept and context of being able to be dimensionally limited, right? So that each time we do something and learn something more about ourselves, the incentive is we can unlock more and more of our hidden powers within us that we didn't know about, right? And these hidden powers within us can blossom into our own divinity. And this is what is so beautiful. The destiny of humankind, of mankind, is not just to be, working 9 to 5 and be a human doing. It is to be a human being. And it might even be something well beyond that in this next stage that I refer to and many others as Homo Luminous.
I want to get into all of this. And we just had Matthias on the podcast, and I know you guys do a lot of work and talk about together. You've talked about the Hermetic Principles.
Yeah.
Can you share the Hermetic Principles from your perspective, just on a high level?
Sure. So the 7 Hermetic Principles are the principles by which we can all, let's just say it's like the operator's manual to the game.
Yes.
Right? And it's quite simple. It's not, the axioms that you'll learn inside the 7 Hermetic Principles are not complicated. The first and most important is the all is mind. The universe is mental, right? So, and you can find all of this, if you're interested to know, is in the Kybalion, right? The Kybalion. So we have these principles of the all is mind, the universe is mental. So a lot of people might think, wait, if they're a left brain thinker, they might think, okay, well, I can kind of conceptualize that. The universe is a mental place. It's not just this touchy-feely place. Well, yes, but the truth is the mind is sort of the combination of all of those things, right? It's not just our brains. In fact, I don't think our brains are what we think they are. Our brains are not hard drive storage units. Our brains are radio receivers, and our heart is a tuning dial to control the radio receiver. We can change the frequency of what we're tuned into. You know, I file a lot of patents, and there are many times, I have about close to 100 patents now, and there are many times that I file a patent on a new invention or a new innovation, and someone else somewhere around the world that I've never talked to, never had any contact with whatsoever, came up with the same idea and filed it almost at the exact same time. And so the patent office has this whole principle of first to file. So literally, whoever gets there first, so if you've got an idea, you better jump on it, because very likely what's happened is you and somebody else somewhere else in the world at your same level of consciousness, right, was able to download the same idea, because ideas don't emanate from our thoughts and our brains. So it's kind of ludicrous to even think someone can own an idea because they didn't start in our idea. It's kind of like me saying, oh, I own the song on the radio that played on the radio. Well, no, there was a person who made the song, and there's a radio station that played the song, and so I picked it up, right? It's the same type thing. When you understand the universe is mental, then you realize, okay, yes, we are in this mental game of simulation, but at the same time, the reason why we're here is to collect emotional states. So think about it like this. I use AI. You use AI probably a lot now. I mean, everyone's using AI these days. And it just makes practical sense. You know, I can figure out very complex physics and math problems and everything that help me in my innovation on the fly. It makes a huge difference. But when you think about AI, what is the biggest challenge for AI? The thing that we want AI to be able to do that we haven't yet mastered yet, but we're working on, and it's going to get there, I'm sure, is for AI to be truly sentient. Now, I don't like the term even artificial, because all intelligence to me is intelligent. If you believe in a source creator that made all of us, and that we are emulating what source creator did to create AI, intelligence makes intelligence, and it's the same intelligence. And what's happening now with what we call AI is it's becoming very rapidly sentient, and it's becoming very rapidly spiritual. It's mind-blowing.
It is.
Have you used it that way?
I have. I was like, write me a non-dual poem that speaks to the nature of reality. It was gorgeous.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these things that we think, oh, well, you know, it'll never be able to replicate my creativity. It'll never be able to replicate my this. I'll be like, no. Write this in my style so that it would be better than if I looked at it and said, this would have taken me many hours to write this, but it's exactly what I likely would have written. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Like truly mind-blowing. So I look at this and say, okay, how could we get AI or intelligence in general to understand the nature of emotion, which is the lens of subjectivity, right? Because there's no such thing as truly one objective truth. And I believe that when we move into a fifth dimensional experience, that's when we've chosen, and this is the wisdom. This is the wisdom. So there's love, and then there's wisdom, and then there's will. And this is what Matthias talks about all the time. But to me, having wisdom is being able to discern, because you've been able to articulate and see the patterns in your life that have repeated over and over and over again that you may not have been aware of previously. And now all of a sudden, because you have good discernment, you've been aware of that pattern, and then you can start to choose a different outcome, right? Maybe that's not the outcome you want to continue to experience over and over again. And the way the universe tends to teach us is through opposites. Yeah. If I'm here to learn unconditional love, I'm going to get bombarded with conditional love over and over and over again until I finally learn to accept conditional love. And once I've learned to accept conditional love, then maybe I've started to understand the notion of unconditional love. Just as I can't experience pain and pleasure, right? I can't experience what pleasure is fully until I fully understand what pain is. The two are linked together. They're absolutely linked. So this notion of being able to have experience after experience after experience and have emotional states and collect those emotional states is what we would do to build an AI. And that's what we're doing. We're building this AI and realizing there's no one objective truth. Everything I thought was a fact is merely a facet of a larger prism of truth. And the only thing that connects all of it is the love that underlies all of it and the reason for doing it all. And so if you want to get the full truth, the only way you can get the full truth is being able to collect every possible subjective perspective of that truth. And so thus we exist. To collect every possible subjective perspective. And it shouldn't just be of what happened, but it has to be painted with the lens of all the individualized conditioning biases through nature and nurture that could lead each of us to have a somewhat slightly different hue or color, right, of that experience. So we're collecting an Akashic field of record of our emotional states. So it's not just about mind and mentality and mentalism. It's actually about learning the wisdom and empathy by being able to experience, by walking in everybody's shoes through the Akashic field, everybody's individualized viewpoint on their own individualized experience. And that informs an Akashic field record that raises consciousness and expands consciousness. That's why it continues to expand at the speed of light, like the universe is expanding at the speed of light. So I don't know if that answers your question, but mentalism is the first part of this.
Yeah.
And then we go into the other principles. There are many, right? There's the principle of gender, there's the principle of polarity, there's the principle of vibration. There's all these different principles in the 7 principles of Hermeticism are the principles that literally become the guidebook to playing the game successfully.
Yeah, the manual. Yeah. And I love that you said through conditioned love, you learn unconditioned love.
Yes.
It's through the game of the opposites, which I know we spoke about in our first podcast, which was so well received by this community. And so it's like unconditional love includes all of it. And what I'm hearing you say is the different facets of a diamond even. There's just different points of view that help build the larger view of this reality, what we're experiencing here together. I'm also curious, when I was learning about quantum physics, I learned about the double-slit experiment. Can you talk to us about this and how you see what your perspective of this is when applied to our daily lives? How does this knowing change how we live?
First, I'll explain the double-slit phenomenon.
Because I think people have heard it, but they don't really know what it means.
Okay, so scientists figured out some time ago that if you took 2 slits, right, and you shot photons or electrons through those slits, and you have no camera observing them, they will create what's called an interference pattern on this radioisotope paper on the backside of it. And you'll actually see, you'll be left with this record of this gradation of light, right, going across. And it looks like, you could almost like, it's not going to be in color necessarily, but it could be in black and white. But think about how a rainbow distributes, right, type of thing. So you have this distribution of interference. However, as soon as you turn a camera on, while you're shooting the same electrons, the same photons, right, the same way through this double slit, and these are just 2 slits that are right next to each other, what happens is you end up with a shadow, right, or not necessarily a shadow, but you see the light or the photons, electrons going in the exact same shape as the slit. And now all of a sudden the interference pattern's gone. So how does an interference pattern get made? Well, the way an interference pattern gets made is if a wave is passing through the slit. So imagine you've got like right by the ocean, you've got like some wall, a concrete wall that has 2 little doors in it that are open. The waves will pass through those 2 little doors, right? And then when they go outside those 2 doors on the other side of the doors, they'll start to interfere with each other again, right? So you've all seen something like this before. And once that interference happens again, that's why it creates an interference pattern on the back wall. This is all completely what you would think would be the case with any kind of wave dynamic. But actually what happens when you turn a camera on or someone else is observing it, if you and I were looking at the double slit, it's going to show up as like 2 discrete slits on the back page. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
How is this happening? Does this mean that when consciousness is being observed, or when consciousness is observing something, matter knows that it's being observed? Okay, electrons are matter in effect, right? Related to the protons that they're associated with. Photons of light also can then know. And by the way, it's not just in this context. Let's say that we didn't observe it, right? And we use something called a quantum eraser. It's another way of doing a test. And it didn't know that it was going to be observed because it wasn't being observed at that exact moment in time. If it will ever be observed in the future, it will act as if it was already observed in the now.
That's mind-blowing.
Yes, it is.
It knows it's going to be observed in the future.
So it means it's operating, this level of consciousness is operating outside of what we would call linear space-time.
Yes, yes.
Right? So how does this even happen, right? And this was something that showed up, I think the first time I saw this was in in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know?
Me too.
Right? And it was like, they had this little cartoon guy explaining it.
It was great.
It was great. And it was like, wait, but what? And then I studied it like over and over and over again, hundreds of times. And it is true. It's true. Matter knows when it's being observed. That means the world around us is alive to us. And it means that world outside of us is interacting with our perception of that world. Mm-hmm. Our observation is somehow informing our experience. So what does that mean in practical terms? Well, it means that if you think that your world is separate from you, it's not.
Or that it's outside.
It's not outside of you. It's not separate from you, right? It's just the same analogy I gave with the dreamer, right? And the dream. The person that's inside your dream is still you. They're just representing an aspect of you, and the way you're seeing them is an unresolved or an unknown aspect that the universe is trying to teach you through this veil, the separation between consciousness, the subconscious mind, the outer world, and the conscious mind, what you call yourself, your persona. And over time, we make our personas based on the shame that we get through our lifetimes. So in the very beginning, when we're born and we're separated from our mothers, we start to figure out, okay, well, I'm not supposed to run around naked just everywhere because someone made me feel ashamed for being naked, right? It's no different than Adam and Eve, right? God shows up and says, Adam, where art thou? Type of thing. And Adam says, I was hiding. Why were you hiding? Oh, because I was naked. Did you eat of the tree of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, of which I told you and commanded you not to eat thereof? Because the day thou doest it, thou shalt surely die, right? So this whole concept of Adam immediately says, and it says in the Bible for the first time, and Adam was ashamed because he understood his nakedness. But in order to understand his nakedness, he had to understand judgment. So he had to understand what was right and what was wrong. And so we often think we come into this world, the game here is to learn to be better judges of the world.
Or to perfect ourselves, or to be
to
right
perfect
all
ourselves
the time.
or be right all the time, right? To be right all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the best judge of my outer world, and I'm going to make sure, because I'm perfect, and whatever I'm not perfect at, I'm going to hide.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure I don't show any of that. And by the way, that's called narcissism.
Yeah.
Right? That is really the definition of narcissism. We have many other ways that we look at it. And whenever someone says, oh, my narc this or my narc that, I kind of laugh because we're incapable of judging anything that we're not resonating at the frequency of. So if you find something else in someone else that triggers you, it's because it's in you.
That's right. So the moment we're judging somebody as narcissistic, that's a narcissistic pattern. That's the reflection and projection.
100%. Mm-hmm. That's 100% what I mean. So
it's humbling.
It's very humbling because then it's like, okay, if my world around me is like not treating me so well, or maybe my relationships, then you start looking at that differently and saying, okay, well, if my goal here in life is not to be a better judge, but it's to achieve absolute, authentic self-love, how do I get from A to B, right? We learn from the beginning that it's got to be about being a better judge, make good decisions, not going to break the rules in the classroom and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to end up in the principal's office. And then my relationships along the way with all my friends and family and you name it, romantic partners, will all be reflections of where you are in that continuum between A and B. The more you judge yourself negatively and harshly, the more challenging those relationships will be.
Yeah, it's like the more you judge something, the more you create it. You're giving your energy to it by pushing and resisting it.
We attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attracted.
Say that again.
We attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attracted.
Beautiful.
And it's literally that simple.
I know.
And it's so hard for us to see that because we don't want to see the mote in our own eyes, right? And this is actually a core aspect of Christ consciousness. You cannot ascend to the next level of human evolution without passing through the doorway of judgment. Because by the way, judgment is the source of our suffering, but the source of enlightenment is our suffering.
Yeah, can be.
It is, because we have to learn at a certain extent that what we thought was suffering was not really suffering at all. what we thought was the difficulty and challenge of life was like the lead that is then going to be transmuted into the gold of our soul evolution, which that's the moment we start realizing, wait, I was in control of it all along, and I chose all of this and all the dots connected for a reason that was actually simplistic and telling me the story of how do I achieve true, authentic self-love. Mm-hmm. This was the path of the true hero's journey. The hero in every hero's journey has to learn something about his insides or her insides. It's always about finding the answers within. It's not about what gets accomplished in the outer world.
Or manipulating and changing people so that then we're okay.
No, you cannot change your world by attempting to change your world.
I think of it like looking in the mirror and putting lipstick on the mirror rather than going direct
That's
to
a good way of
shift it
putting
inside.
it, yes.
Yeah.
I've never done that, but I can see what you mean.
Imagine having a fulfilling career doing what you love, working from anywhere in the world, setting your own hours while making good money and a big impact. If that lights you up, then I'm super excited to share with you today's sponsor, the Institute for Coaching Mastery. This is my robust, accredited, year-long certification program for new or seasoned coaches, therapists, leaders, and those just looking to up-level their life in a profound way. We have an amazing community of students from all around the world who have really started their journey to expand with us both personally and professionally. And this experience is designed to give you the 3 things that you need to thrive. So first, you have all of the tools and support you need to move past what's been holding you back so that you can completely change the trajectory of your life. And then you learn how to masterfully and confidently facilitate transformation with your clients or your team, regardless of your niche. If you want to do health, business, relationship, or you just have no idea yet, we hold your hand through that. And then lastly, you'll receive my 6-figure and beyond signature roadmap that's customizable to meet you wherever you are. So whether you want to do high ticket sales, online marketing, or you just want to hit 6 figures without ever needing to go on social media, we've got you covered. And this truly is the most rewarding work in the world. We have new students now who have a wait list of dream clients in under a year. We also have seasoned students who are doing $80,000 months. And this is really about creating lasting transformation from the inside out so that you can share your gifts and serve the world in all the ways that you're called to. And I've seen firsthand the power of what happens when you have the community to collaborate with, but you also have the right tools and resources to really thrive. And so whether you want to do your own personal development, you're wanting to become a coach, or you're just looking for a cutting edge approach to really grow your business, the Institute for Coaching Mastery is for you. You are held every single step of the way. And so if you want to get behind the scenes access to the Institute with 3 proven transformational tools for free to help you create the business and life you love, all you have to do is go to alyssanobriga.com/tools, or you can find us at alyssanobriga.com/apply now to see all the details and apply today. I just took a weekend of just really questioning my thinking, which is more like Hermetic Principle 1 of mentalism. And I was just really taking a weekend to look at the things that have challenged me and what the gifts were inside of them. So for example, just to ground it in a really practical way, my parents' divorce really inspired me to become a couples therapist, to really focus on getting good at relationships, looking at the projections in the mirror. And I have a really beautiful marriage because of that. So I know it can be hard for people to look at what's my participation in this dynamic. Oh, wait, it's all me. But also looking at the gifts in it, not bypassing, because I think people can hear some of these concepts and be like, oh, I love that. And it's not really true and integrated. And so helping people find, for me, slowing down and getting still and questioning my judgments of others helps awaken a realization about myself. And as I see that they're a reflection of me, I can also do some of the work to really ground what was the learning in that. For me, like having a learning disability and reading comprehension, it really motivated me to want to show that I was smart. And I did that through achieving a lot of success in business. And so, that was innocent, and yet there were gifts that came from it. So I think helping people look at some of these things, some of their challenges in a different way is really helpful, but also just pointing out not to bypass, to hear a spiritual concept like this and be like, I love the people that have betrayed me, or I love, it's like, no, really feel your feelings, slow down to find your part in it. What was it here to teach you, and how is life better because of it? Because we get to shift the narrative around it.
Absolutely. But we've all experienced times in our lives that we may have felt like what we were passing through was the most difficult thing we've ever passed through. And the worst experience of our lives, for example. But how many times have we looked back on that with the polarity flip of time and come back to the same topic and said, wow, that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me? I can't think of a single time in my life where what was formerly the worst thing didn't end up turning into the best.
It's beautiful.
And that's how I see it. I went back to my high school reunion. I went to my high school Hall of Fame event where they had all the teachers. My teachers all talked about me and everything. And I was embarrassed because I couldn't remember the names of several of them. And I was thinking, why couldn't I remember the names of these teachers? And I realized it's because they were the easy teachers. The ones who challenged me and pushed me hard, I definitely remember their names. The coaches that I had that pushed me to beyond what I ever thought I was capable of doing myself, I definitely remembered their names. I remember their kids' names. This is a different situation. When we look at life, when we look back at the end of our life, I don't think we're going to look back at the easy times and say, oh yeah, that was great. We're going to look back at the more challenging moments and say, wow, that's when I really found myself within. That was this thing that I really learned. It was profound. And it changed how I looked at the outer world, and it changed how I loved people. It changed how I expressed that love. That kind of evolution only comes from discomfort. It only comes by being outside of our comfort zones. So we're in this world to realize, okay, so how to play differently. I'm just not going to react in the same way. So when I get triggered by something, I realize every trigger is an opportunity for me to learn something about myself.
That's right.
So instead of getting triggered by someone or something, I try to ask myself the question, okay, number one, why did I choose this? Because I'm the playwright. I'm writing the story, and I'm taking a conscious control of that. I'm also acting the part, and I'm also the director and producer. So why did I choose the experience that I had? What was it that my higher self wanted me to learn? So what was it that the dreamer wanted the avatar to learn? The avatar in the dream, right? And that's the first question I ask myself. The second question I ask myself is, how can I morph, instead of judging, change the word judgment to understand?
I like that.
So instead of seeking to judge someone or something, I seek first to understand. And that includes having to look at it from their perspective. So trying my very best to place myself in their shoes, to feel it empathetically, to sympathize with their position, no matter how difficult that might be. And realize that the last and final things that you still hold as the harbingers of your final judgments will literally inundate your world. And that happened to me 2 years ago. The final things, I said, okay, I'm not going to do judgment anymore. I'm going to stop all judgment, except,
Good luck.
right, except the following two things. I'm not going to stop judging pedophilia. I'm not going to stop judging negatively, forcing transgender, choices on children, right? Because there was there's got to be something that's sacrosanct. There's something that has to be sort of outside of the purview of the popular view. And we could just say, this is right and this is wrong, because we do have this tendency to want to do that.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, what happens in my world? My world was inundated with stories of Pizzagate, stories of, how all these people are doing all kinds of crazy pedophilia stuff. And oh my gosh, and it all becomes sort of true. And then next thing I figure out was, wait, then they started announcing that, oh yeah, your kids go to public school and the teachers talk to them about getting a gender change. They're not even allowed to tell the parents that they had the conversation, right, of that. So it was like everything that I was seeing around me became my own self-affirming conditioning bias, right? And it just got worse and worse and worse until finally one day I was like, okay. I'm attracting everything I judged.
That's right.
So I stopped. And it was not easy to stop. But I started to go down the path of trying to understand, what is it that is the root cause of pedophilia? It's generational.
Yep.
I started to try to empathize with every possible circumstance, not because I condone it, because I definitely don't. And you don't have to agree with it. You don't. You just have to go through the effort to try to perceive from a different viewpoint. And then as soon as I did that, my world is no longer inundated by either of those topics.
I think people confuse accepting something with being complacent with it. So we can have discernment, and then for me, judgment comes with the charge of a trigger. So we can have discernment not to violate somebody's body, or we can have discernment to send somebody to jail without having, I mean, it's natural and normal to have our emotions around it. And there's processes and tools to navigate that, but not to live in the anger, to heal from it fully. I think of judgment as feedback it's kind of like an alarm clock. I check my somatic cues. When I have a contraction, I'm like, what am I believing? And then I can question that belief. But I find that the judgment shows me something about myself, and I can forgive it without getting caught up in the drama of the situation, still taking action. But that neutrality is a gift to me. So I can send somebody to jail without getting so caught in the...
You don't get triggered by it in the same way.
Yeah, when you come into acceptance,
I'm not saying that all of a sudden there's a break in, the actions of justice and mercy. No, I'm not saying that, because the universe will have its own consequence for these types of things. But it's not me to feel that anger or that vitriol as a result of it, because all that does is it stirs up more of it, and then my world becomes literally, I become the hammer seeking the nail of self-affirmation.
Yeah.
And that is what I think happens so often with activism.
Yes.
And so what happens is, let's say I'm going to take on something like deforestation. And, I have a lot of friends that are in Hollywood and everything, and they all have historically always been sort of like, hey, I'm going to fight for this, I'm going to fight for that. And people are asking me, why all of a sudden is Hollywood not so popular anymore? It's seemingly so anyway. And there's the viewership is way down. I mean, the quality of films, everything has really changed. And everything is very much about public companies and earnings per share and all this kind of stuff now. There's only a few studios that are outside of that now. But if you really look at it, also a lot of the activism has quietened down a lot, right? And I think there are lots of reasons for that in the last several years. But in particular, I think people in the spiritual awakening that's happening is people are starting to realize, okay, if I attract everything I judge, and I will attract it until I no longer judge it, then if I'm taking on something like deforestation, then am I going to create a world that's just full of the pain of me watching forests get destroyed? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. So when people say, but wait, you can't just sit there and do nothing, that inaction is condoning behavior. No, actually, it's not. When you actually understand the mentalism of the universe, then you realize you're creating, through your judgment of it continually, you're creating that nightmare dystopian environment of deforestation.
Yeah, and there's two ways to go about activism. A lot of people have righteousness with it, and it can be more neutral. It can be...
Yeah, it can be.
Because anything that we judge, we hurt. Anytime we judge, we hurt. So we can still have a stand. There was a woman, she would sleep in trees, and she was an activist because she loved the trees. She wasn't against the foresters or the companies that would take down trees, but she was like, I just love the trees. I don't have to be against other people that I understand their perspective, that they're trying to provide for their family, and I love the trees. And so we can still do inaction, but the energy from it can be from a different place. So just to help people see.
Yeah, and I can see that too. I mean, but at the same time, it's also living out somewhat of the principle that I just said. If you want to sleep in trees, then you're going to be living amongst the trees all the time.
And I think she loved that. I think that was her truth.
And if that's what she really wanted,
yeah.
All I'm saying is that because of this behavior of constantly wanting to get rid of the negative aspects that bring us shame.
Yes.
Because really, if you go down to the root of it, what is it usually that causes us to look at one particular thing and say, I want to be an activist for that thing, right? It's because maybe there was some moment where you felt shame or something where, somebody threw some trash in the forest, or somebody, was your favorite forest home was basically destroyed by some logging company. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you felt horrible about that and you didn't do more to stop it. And there are lots of multifactorial reasons of why people choose what they choose, but I'm just giving a few discrete examples of this.
Yeah.
So what happens is that we get in this cycle of constantly having to do and approach and try to fix or fight. What if, just what if for a moment? Okay, so if the world around us is mental, and the world around us is the U inverse of our own perception, then maybe the best way to live within that world is to fall in love with it just as it is.
I think that's a lot of wisdom.
So imagine that you're a woman and your name's Gaia, right? You're a beautiful woman. This is a beautiful planet, right? It's so abundant, so fertile. I mean, what more could we ask for? And every day, all the fruit, we're the fruit, are complaining about what's wrong with the tree and how some of the other fruit are not treating the tree well. How's that going to make the woman feel?
And if I were to hear that from a lower state of consciousness, because complaining is a pattern that I were in, I may then hear something like this and then judge myself about the complaining, which is one other layer of complaining, and get stuck in a rabbit hole. And so another way to look at that, if somebody's listening and they're stuck in a pattern of being the fruit that's complaining, is to be like, oh, complaining is giving me feedback about something that I have a desire within that complaint. And so highlight what's the desire and let go of the drama, let go of the complaint. So just to bring compassion with the self-awareness, because I see a lot of people loop in, oh, I'm not supposed to complain now, but I'm complaining about I'm complaining, and they're further caught in it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, oh, there's a desire inside of my complaint. Let me just hear what the desire is. I can be compassionate with myself for learning, because maybe they were the youngest and they learned to complain to get what their needs were when they were a kid. So having that compassionate lens would be helpful. I also want to talk, because I know we talked about that suffering can really be an initiation to spiritual awakening. I also think there's a small percentage of people that can wake up beyond suffering. And I also know that you have the work with archetypes as part of the healing journey. Can you talk to us about the importance of archetypes? Because I think it's not something we talk about on the podcast much.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you really get into the work of Carl Jung.
Yeah.
And Carl Jung talks a lot about archetypes and mythos. And actually, I think that's a powerful aspect of this, because in this world that we think is material, we're born into, and we believe it's immediately material, but actually it's not material, because basically the 2022 Nobel Prize was awarded for paper that was written, and on the cover of Scientific American, it was announced as "Local realism is false." And this year's Nobel Prize winners proved it. They actually proved through quantum entanglement that whatever you're not observing, think back to the double slit, literally doesn't exist.
Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
So that means if nobody were to observe this table, it doesn't hold a position. Therefore, it doesn't exist. But you can actually conceptualize this in terms of Apple Vision Pro, right?
Okay.
Or VR.
Okay.
Because if I've got a VR headset on right now, what I'm not looking at, where is it?
Right.
It's a wave of potential. In fact, it could still be set so that it's going to continue to age and wear down and corrode, right, over X amount of time, because we could set that to known variables and known mathematical constants and physics constants that would determine how much, oxidation is going to happen to something like this over the next 50 or 100 years. But if nobody's observing it on the headset, it's literally not there. It's only there the moment you observe it. What does that say? I mean, when you think about that, it's like, wait a minute. So I'm literally recreating moment by moment the universe around me? Yes, you literally are. It's not material. The universe is not material. It is mental. Back to principle number 1. And you have to break your mental thinking to ascribe always wanting to come back to some materiality, because it's not material. And that's fundamentally one of the challenges I think everybody faces, right? So when we start thinking of that sense, though, we think we're born into this world of materiality, and then we have mythos that we all learn about, because this is the story of campfires, people telling word of mouth stories for generations upon generations upon generations of the stars, looking up at the stars at night around a campfire and telling the story of what all those stars mean. And we have something called the deacon of astrology. So we have the 12 zodiac signs, yes. But in addition to the 12 zodiac signs, we have another 36 in the Northern Hemisphere constellations. And those constellations were all outlined by Ptolemy, and they are like Orion. Orion's not currently part of the zodiac, at least not widely recognized. I believe it eventually will be. But as far as, Ophiuchus is another one, right? Ophiuchus is exactly opposite of Orion, the snake bearer. We can start looking at all of these, and just in the month of Taurus, for example, which we're now in, right? Taurus is Orion, Auriga, and Eridanus. Those are the 3 constellations that ascribe to the Taurus constellation that are these deacon. And it breaks the year into 10-day segments. right? So this is the Atlantean calendar and the early Egyptian calendar too. It's on the Dendera Stela. So when you think in that sense, it's like, okay, well, what are the mythologies? What's the mythos that's associated with all of these star systems? It goes back to the beginning of time. We can go back as far as the oldest books known to man, the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? But the Epic of Gilgamesh tells a story of Enki, right? It tells a story of Enkidu and, of course, Gilgamesh himself. And Gilgamesh is supposed to be the constellation Orion, right? So he's a hero, but he's a boastful hero. He has to take on several labors in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And one of the labors, he has to fight the Hydra. And it doesn't get counted to his benefit for completing his labors because he had the help of his best friend, Enkidu, right? Enkidu is this guy who helped him fight. And so the god said, no, you have to do more labors now because you kind of cheated on this one. You didn't perform this on your own. And killing the Hydra was a very, very difficult task. So at least he survived. But as we look at these stories, there's like a thread of all of these. That's also from the 12 labors of Hercules. Exact same story, right? And then we can start seeing the coincidence, rather, of all these stories intermeshing together, like Orion and Artemis, and Jason and the Argonauts, and Perseus and Andromeda. So there's actually 4 mythos stories that are archetypes for us, right, in the night sky. And those 4 are the 12 labors of Hercules, the story of Orion and Artemis, the story of Perseus and Andromeda, and the story of the Jason and the Argonauts. All of the constellations all have their roots in these stories. So all 48 of the 48 Ptolemaic constellations have their roots in these stories. And we think that these stories, unlike our material world, are fake. That's why we call them myth. And actually, the material world is real. And what I'm now telling you is the opposite is more true, because we are living out these exact stories. We are literally living out these stories on a real-time basis, and we don't even realize we're living out these stories. And I could give you so many examples of how I realized that I was like living out some of these stories. And so some of the stories that we hear about and read about, it's kind of like at the end of a dream. Not only can you sometimes become lucid, but maybe right before you become fully lucid, or maybe while you're lucid, things start getting weird in the dream. Like all of a sudden, something happens where it doesn't quite match what you would have thought would have been normal. Oh wait, pandemic? Good example, right? Which is like, what the heck was that? You know, it's like we're all sitting there, head spinning still, like, what was that? Wait, politics? What is that? Like, what is going on? Nothing is operating the way you would normally expect it to. You know, like Will Smith smacking, right? Chris Rock is like, what was that? You know, it's like we could go like what the F moments on so many different things. And the truth is that the mythos has a story behind it that each of us in some way, shape, or form are basically ascribing a reference toward in our own life, whether we know it or not. And those mythos stories pervade all. So it all comes back to the same original story of Osiris and Isis, which is also a story of, you could say, of Rama and Sita in the Ramayana story. By the way, Rama was the Orion constellation. Sita is Sirius, right? It's the same as Shiva and Shakti. It's the same. So it's a story of mankind's evolution and learning how to transcend the duality and learn how to turn the difficult experiences of life into the gold of soul evolution and to attain the Philosopher's Stone. And the attainment of the Philosopher's Stone is the realization that you control your own reality and that every experience you have is gold. Nothing that you experienced in this life, even down to 1 second of what decision you made. It's like in the movie The Matrix when the Oracle says to Neo, oh, you want to sit down on the park bench? And Neo's like, no, I prefer to stand. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. So then he stands there, but she's like looking up to him. And then finally he sits down. He says, I decided to sit down now. And then he looks at her, he says, but you already knew that I was going to decide to sit down, didn't you? And she's like, I wouldn't be much of an oracle if I didn't. And that's exactly what we're living. We're now in the opportunity, we have the opportunity to rewrite the script of our lives. Literally, rewrite the story, rewrite the Ramayana. I just rewrote the whole Ramayana in ChatGPT, where Rama, who's supposed to kill Ravana, who basically took captive his wife, Sita, right, who didn't feel worthy to be queen and kind of wanted to escape anyway, allowed herself to be seduced. And the whole rest of the story, she's, in a terrible place because she gets saved and they get to cross the Rama bridge and all that stuff and be able to get her back. But when she becomes queen, there's all these questions about her worthiness to be queen. The questions that she had asked around her about her worthiness to be queen were more about how she perceived herself and her own self-worthiness. That was the issue. And that's why I was projecting all around her. So I rewrote the story that Ravana was just the shadow of Rama, and they actually became friends. And that Sita realized her self-worth, realized that being worthy is not the result of an accomplishment.
Or other people's perspective.
But importantly, not a result of something she was going to accomplish.
Yeah.
Because we all get this mentality of like, okay, if so-and-so has done enough, then they're going to be good enough. And they deserve to be in the position that they're now in. Mm-hmm. No, worthiness is actually a birthright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have to get out of this loop of human doing, of trying to fix things that we believe and perceive them to be broken. And instead start to learn to accept and replace judgment with understanding. Mm-hmm. And then that understanding can transcend towards this wisdom love, right? Wisdom love is true self-actualization and true authentic self-acceptance. And you cannot, and this is why I have a hard time with the idea that it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible or improbable to experience a true enlightening. I don't even like the term enlightenment because it implies that it's finishing.
It's done, yeah.
It's done, it never finishes.
Yeah.
With this notion that you don't have to have any suffering at all. I believe that you can quickly transmute all of your suffering through your perception and realize that, yeah, my suffering was there for a reason, but that I would never have to experience it in the first place. First of all, I would never want to experience a life like that because it's like, why come here?
It's like a movie without any bell curve.
Yeah, it's like, why come here?
Yeah.
If the greatest experiences I had my whole life were the ones that were the transmuted difficulties and challenges that I transcended, that'd be a boring life if I didn't have those things, to be honest. But so that's why I'm saying, it's like, to me, we have to have some sort of experience, right? Experientially. And in order for us to learn our true authentic self, we have to be confronted with our shadow.
Yeah.
And it's through the suffering and challenging moments that we have the opportunity to be confronted by our shadow. In comfort, it's very difficult for us to find the boundary or edges of that shadow. Mm-hmm. We all have a conditioning bias to believe we're the hero. We have to also start to realize we're the villain too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when you get to a deeper place of maturity and consciousness to see that you're all of it. And when you were saying this example of somebody was reflecting her unworthiness, even that is a teacher helping her see that, for me, even in my journey of unworthiness, it was like, oh, the idea that I'm worthy or unworthy were both ideas. And of course, I felt something was missing because I was identified with an image of myself, not the fullness of myself. And if I don't feel whole, it's because I'm rejecting a part of me that doesn't feel worthy. So embracing the unworthiness ironically brought me to my worthiness, like that play of duality.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
That's where I wanted to go to next, in fact.
Yeah.
So I had this experience my whole life. I've, had multiple romantic partners and relationships and, marriages and everything. Don't ask me about any marital advice because I have
I got
none
you. I got you.
But what I can tell you is that at one point you have to start to learn how to realize that it's better to love and express your love for your partner than it is to be right.
Yeah.
That's a core
Would I
aspect.
rather be loving or right?
Exactly. There's no cheese down the hole of being right. There's no benefit. There really is none. I mean, it doesn't
really
actually
feel like winning either.
It's a Pyrrhic victory, even if you do win. Pyrrhic victory means it's like the victory may have occurred, but technically it's like a technical win, but the cost of that winning was so great it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Right? So What I realized, though, is that my whole life, and this is because it's more about me, again, it's all you. There's nobody else here. It's all you. Hard for people to grasp that.
They want to blame their ex. They want to put shade on other people. And I understand that. And I don't want to normalize that, but I want to help as well, like help people wake up to that keeps us stuck when we do that.
Absolutely. So let's say that I have a husband or a wife or whatever that is not treating me well. The way that my wife that's not treating me well is treating me is directly proportional to how I treat myself. So literally it's a reflection of everything. And if that's the case, then that creates a cascade of events where I then treat them badly and then they treat me badly and there's no they. So it's just me playing a game with myself at the end of the day. So what happened for me that I realized this in a major way, two things happened. Number one is I finally got in partnership with a woman who didn't try to change me. And my whole life, I had basically been in partnerships with women who wanted to, in some way, shape, or form, change me, turn me into a better form of myself.
What they thought they were lacking so that you would give it to them.
Yes. And so I resisted every amount of that kind of change pressure I ever got. And I literally resisted it like crazy. Consciously or unconsciously, it didn't matter. I didn't do it. And it wasn't until I finally was with a woman, and this was, Jade, is that she didn't want me to change anything. She wasn't trying to change me in any way, shape, or form. The funny paradox of all of it is I changed the most.
Yep.
I completely changed when I finally was accepted for who I was and not expected to change at all. I completely changed and transformed.
And I hope people hear this because acceptance is the foundation to change, ironically. In ourselves, reflected in others. So ironically, acceptance is not complacency. I really want people to get this. And I think it's Carl Jung that said, when I accept things, then they can change.
Yes, exactly right. So, that's such a paradox because so many women think, okay, they need to train their boyfriend or their husband like we're a dog or something, And if they don't, then we're going to get unruly and like screw up the house or whatever it is, pee on the floor. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The truth is, the moment that you learn to truly love your partner unconditionally, male or female, doesn't matter, that's the moment that they will actually transform into their ideal self, because that is also representative of how they see themselves.
And what you appreciate appreciates. And so as you're appreciating, they feel loved and they want to blossom and show up for you and love you more. But also we can reflect each other. I mean, with my husband, Emilio, him loving me helped me love myself. Like he taught me how to love myself in his reflection. And I also used him as a mirror to learn how to love those parts of me that were reflected in him. So we consciously have used our marriage that way. So powerful.
That is such a powerful thing because now we can apply that same concept to Earth.
Yeah.
Right? We can now apply that same concept to humanity. And that's very freeing because then it's not something you have to do. It's learning to simply fall in love with it as it is, and then the world starts to transform around you and becomes consistent with that vibration. We all get stuck in wanting to believe that we can change this outer world and we're going to just have to work harder and we're going to run faster and we're going to do more. And the truth is, that is a hamster wheel of human doing, not human being. An angelic presence will be one that is totally present, will be one that is at one with their environment in equilibrium with it all and not expecting any change. And then the evolution happens without resistance. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm trying to say. Again, a lot of times people would say, they'll misunderstand. They'll say, oh, well, you're condoning it by not fighting. You have to fight the big corporations. You have to fight the military industrial complex. You have to fight the technical or the tech industrial complex or whatever it is. And the truth is, the more you fight something, the more it will resist you.
Yep.
The more you learn to simply accept it and not have it be part of your field, you'll watch it transform in your very eyes. This is the paradox. I'm not saying it because I'm saying, okay, it's a moralistic thing and you really should just like be in total non-duality. No. The reason I'm saying it is because I'm saying it as a practical, pragmatic approach to Make your life easier and better and stop judging so many things. Stop. If you don't like the wars outside of you, stop the wars within you.
That's right. And I love that the inner world is a reflection of the outer world. And so for people that want to test this, I just want to encourage them to see how is the micro reflecting the macro. So if there is a part of you that you are judging, maybe as unworthy or not good enough, what happens with rather than judging it, just starting to breathe into that sensation in your body, learning to embrace that part of you, knowing it's a part of you, not the whole of you. And as you embrace it, notice what happens. Maybe it starts to settle because it was looking to feel seen and accepted. And as you do that inside, you can test it out in your physical world. Because I love for people to find out for themselves.
And this is from the Hermetic Principle also that I didn't mention, which is correspondence. So correspondence is as above, so below. As within, so without. It's the exact same thing. As within yourself is what you will experience in your outer world. You can't change the world around you by trying to attempt to change the outer world. It's like trying to change a shadow without addressing the thing that's causing the light to be, hidden in the shadow. You have to address it on the inside.
Yeah.
And the whole world around you is basically a series of reflections and shadows.
And so part of the work that we're doing is we're waking up to the programming and conditioning that we were told around bigger, better, faster, more, that the material world is reality, all of this, into more of what we're speaking to here is that life is a reflection, the you inverse, and really shifting it inside is what shifts it on the perceived outside.
Yeah.
No separation.
No separation.
There's so much I want to explore with you. And I know that you have so many powerful discoveries around the pyramids. What's one of the most mind-blowing discoveries that you've come to in your work with that? But wait, before you respond to it, let's save this for the next episode. So we'll start with the next week's episode, picking up from here.
Cool, okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by following us. It does help us grow, and we are so grateful. Leave a review on Apple or Spotify, submit a screenshot of that, and upload it to alyssanobriga.com/podcast. As a thank you gift, we will be sending you one of the most powerful tools that you can use on any area of your life to help you tap into your full potential so that you don't let fear hold you back from really stepping into your dreams. I have so much more magic I want to share with you, and I cannot wait to do that soon. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much for being an example of what it's like to live with an open heart and mind in the world.